One of the great fallacies of the age, certainly of my lifetime, is this notion that the left wing would be the revolution, that the left wing would be the revolutionary event in Western society, that the left were a revolutionary, unfinished dynamic that still had yet one more great revolution to do. And you have this whole idea of left-wing groups such as the Socialist Workers' Party and all the aristocrats and toffs in that, and all the wealthy in other kinds of radical, or what they believe was radical left-wing groups in the West, that the whole thing had put them up against a wall and that's the end of them. The irony is, there's two reasons why that never happened. The first reason is, people don't want a socialist or a left-wing revolution. The bloodbaths of the Bolsheviks, the National Socialists, the Bolshevik Socialists, Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge, Cuba, you name it, and so on, put people off any kind of socialist or left-wing revolution for all eternity. Just the bloodbaths that were left in their wake. That's other than lunatics and psychopaths, the mentally unhinged and aristocrats, but nobody else wanted that. The other reason was it had been successful. The left-wing revolution had been successful. If you look around you, the whole mainstream, the entire mainstream is left-wing. It's definitely cultural Marxism has triumphed. Now, it didn't triumph because the people wanted it. It would triumph because it was forced upon the masses through political correctness and these kinds of ideas. But it's been an absolute success. You look at every single mainstream media outlet, every single university academic, almost to the man or to the woman, all the journalists, all the newspapers, everything. All the educational bodies, the government bodies, the bureaucratic bodies, the globalist bodies, everything, it's all cultural Marxist. The left has complete control. And so this idea of these groups like Antifa and all these other social justice warriors who are believing that they're somehow not part of the mainstream, they are part of the mainstream. What they want is what's already being pushed by the mainstream. So, for instance, they would look up to someone like, it's what I call the Lisa Simpson dynamic. Lisa Simpson thinks she's kind of cool, but she's actually the lamest member of that family. That's what the social justice warriors and the left-wingers are, the Socialist Workers' Party, people before profit, and all these kind of operations. They think they're revolutionaries, but all they're doing is mandating the mainstream. So, for instance, to them, someone like John Oliver would be considered like radical. John Oliver is no more radical than Walter Cronkite was back in his day, or any, BBC newsreader. That's complete and totally mainstream, and this is what they fail to understand, that they're not in the mainstream. They've achieved what they want, and there is no more revolution to happen. So therefore, there's a frustration among the left is, what do we do next? Now, this frustration was compounded by what happened on what they call the alt-right. The alt-right is, and look, I'm in the middle. I call myself a psychic anarchist. I don't have an interest in left or right. I just see both of them as energetic forces that I can ride for my own sort of like psychic anarchy purpose. That's all I see them as. And if I prefer a left-wing person to win something, or a left-wing agenda, or right, I don't care, once that agenda suits me. So that's why I wanted Trump to win, because he would be like a Loki-type character, and he would unleash this enormous potential for, well, the entertainment that we've been subjected to ever since he got elected, by the meltdowns and the hissy fits of the left wing. And the establishment left wing, which is all the left wing. There's no such thing as a non-established left wing. Antifa are pure establishment. There is establishment, because that's why they wanted Hillary Clinton, and they are pure establishment. They're nothing else. So we had this bizarre situation. So the only revolution left to fight was the revolution by the alt-right, and young people who did not identify with that, mostly working class whites in Britain and America, and North America, Canada, and so on. And they were the ones who really answered the call when it came to any kind of brilliant revolution. They were the first ones to realize things like memes, that you could use memes to actually disrupt and destroy globalization. I mean, they destroyed Hillary Clinton. The alt-right, what they call trolls, which really should be called magicians, they absolutely destroyed. And the fact that synchronistic things unfold, like Keck magic and all mimetics and all these kinds of things worked for them, the left look absolutely pathetic, lame and outdated. What the left and the mainstream are like nowadays, and the normies as they call them, which is a great term, I like that better than sheeple, the normies. What they're like these days, we live in an age, I'm recording this on a beautiful digital camera that I bought last year, right? It can take video, it can take film, it can make broadcast level film, it takes beautiful photographs. That's what the alt-right are. What the mainstream and the left wing and the liberals are is they're still using 35mm cameras with 35mm film, sending it off to the shop to get it developed and getting the prints back. That's the level that they're at in terms of the revolutionary understanding of the day, of the mimetics of the era, of the zeitgeist of the era, where the alt-right have completely and utterly embraced the full potential of what we were given to them. They turn social media into their bitch, and you just see things like, all the left can do, like, it's just like calling someone a conspiracy theorist to shut them up. All the left can do with something like 4chan is call them trolls. The fact is that 4chan are geniuses. Now they do the same with Trump. Trump is operating the same model. He's not using the 35mm camera with the film being developed, going back into the shop and waiting for prints to come back. He's using this new technology. He's using Twitter. He's bypassing the mainstream media to go directly to the people and to his constituency via Twitter. It's absolutely genius. And you just see the implosion among the mainstream. They don't know what to do with it. You had some lunatic at Twitter who on the last day temporarily shut down his account. This is how pathetic, and they've lost. You have lost. It's like the people who ran smear campaigns against me. That is rooted in failure. You have lost. If I was a nobody, if I was a failure, if I wasn't getting anywhere, I hadn't got an audience, you wouldn't bother with the smear campaigns, would you? No, but you've lost. You're a failure, and all you're doing is advertising your ineptitude and your inconsequentiality to the world when you do that. You understand that? If you're a nobody, nobody cares. If you're a somebody, they attack you if you don't like what you're saying or what you're doing. And so mediocrity always tries to claw down creativity, and that's what's going on here. Trump is a genius. I mean, I don't understand why people, even if you don't like him, you have to admit this is a whole new world he's brought the world into. He has given a voice to himself as a man, as Donald Trump, rather than being presidential. People don't want presidential anymore. People don't want statesmanship. People want direct action. And direct action as a president of the United States using Twitter to actually connect with his constituency directly. He's often extremely funny, and the reaction is astounding. He has to just say one tweet and he will send literally millions of unhinged and unstable liberals and left-wingers into utter and total psychosis. And they have no answer to it, while the alt-right have people like Milo and Lionel Nation and all these other types who are very fun. I'm not crazy about a lot of them, some of the alt-right, mind you, but these people, those two guys, are very good and very funny. What's the best the left can come up with? Calling him dumph. This is like, you're done, you're finished. You've lost the revolution, because the revolution was always going to be a psychic revolution. Now, the difference between the alt-right revolution and the left-wing cultural Marxist revolution is the alt-right revolution didn't do it by deviousness and stealth. They did it by creativity and genius. And believe me, when you go to war against someone or something, an entity that's creative, witty, clever, and is not afraid of your slurs, is not afraid of their remarks, you will never defeat that enemy. So, sorry lefties, there's not going to be a revolution. It's ironic, it's like when people said, when the Great Awakening would happen, they all thought it'd be some piece of shit like Russell Brand, when there's millions of dollars riding on a unicorn talking about spiritual consciousness. They all thought it was going to be something like that. In the end, what was the Great Awakening? The Great Awakening was none other than himself than the living Loki, Donald Trump. Oh, and one more thing. I had a new film out on my open source occult TV channel called Between Mortals and Gods, in which I touch on the sort of more magical and esoteric aspects of the whole, well, what's going on in the world right now, as well as a kind of a history of magic on a primer, if you're interested in that kind of thing. And on sorcery, basically to promote my new book on sorcery, which is coming out, and also my 2018 art calendar, which, if that kind of thing interests you, there's a nice art calendar I've got out of 12 paintings, and you can frame them at the end of the year. If you look below, I'll put the links below. Thanks very much.